back in 2004, it was pretty easy to become a game publisher. You see, the PS2, a really big fucking console, both in physical size and in how much it sold. Like, to this day, this still is the most commonly selling console of all time, and, well, some say it's because of the presence of a DVD drive. To me, it's because the games for it were just amazing. It was back in the day where every game was still kind of unique in its own way, and you know, not like the flood of all samey games like we have nowadays. But the PS2, it wasn't just popular at the end of its life cycle, and to this day. And back in the day, the console was really growing a lot, and a lot of publishers took leverage of that. Like, Capcom would take their supposed exclusive Resident Evil 4 and, you know, make like a PS2 version right half a year or something after the GameCube release. But more importantly, Rockstar Games. Now we all know and love Rockstar for the amazing stuff they can pull off today. You know, if you take a look at stuff like Grand Theft Auto 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, they don't really do a lot nowadays. But back in the day, when they did something, like holy shit, did they do something? And Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is no exception. This is one of the games that not only kickstarted a lot for Rockstar Games, it kickstarted a lot for the entirety of the gaming industry. Like, Rockstar just picked perfect time and platform. Though the game did come out in 2004 for the PlayStation 2, a year later in 2005 we would get the game for the Microsoft Xbox and the Windows PC. Now for this review I'll be looking at the PC version because that's the one I grew up with ever since I was a younger man. So, let's get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas for Windows PC, PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. You know, a part of me wonders why I'm even bothering to make this video. I mean, let's be real. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is one of the most commonly, if not the most commonly selling PS2 game out there. Everyone played this game, and if you haven't played the game, you should. Like, I know that some people may not really appreciate the clunkiness of the PS2, because this was still in the day and age where gameplay wasn't yet perfected. Like nowadays, it pretty much is. But back in the day, like, it was obvious that the game had some problems, but the problems were typical problems for its time. And again, when it comes to both gameplay-wise and graphic-wise, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas holds up a lot. And I even think that because of the game's setting, it can even look more, well, it doesn't specifically look better, but it has more of an identity than, you know, the later Grand Theft Auto 4, which, in my opinion, is a step backwards from San Andreas. San Andreas, it had a whole lot of stuff. Like, it had a whole lot of stuff that made the game unique. It had a whole lot of stuff that made the game stand out, that made the game have its own identity. But blending in, if you put it aside, you know, modern games. But before I get into the game, we first have the plot summary to go through.
After 5 years on the East Coast, it was time to go home.
That line will go down as probably one of the most iconic lines in video game history. The story begins with the protagonist, Carl Johnson, arriving in Los Santos, Rockstar's reimagination of Los Angeles, after being away for a long time. Carl spent most of his time in Liberty City, where he was a small-time hustler. For those of you that don't know, for the special edition of San Andreas, there was apparently a bonus DVD where some stuff got explained that happened before the game, tying some events together. It's about a 20-minute video and you can probably find it on YouTube. I still haven't gone around to watch it yet. I mean, I probably should. So yeah, give it a watch if you can. Carl returns to Los Santos after hearing that his mother has been killed. Not long after arriving, he gets picked up by the corrupt police unit Crash and is set up for the murder of Officer Penelberry, who threatened to reveal the unit's corruption. With the cops having claimed dominance over CJ, they drop him in a rival gang area where the game begins, with a probably even more iconic line.
Oh shit, here we go again.
When CJ arrives at the funeral after meeting with Big Smoke,
You picked the wrong house, fool!
he's frowned upon by Sweet and Ryder, who see him as a sellout and or buster because he kept running away from his problems. After an encounter with rival gang member the Ballas, the group disbands and the game properly begins. CJ does many things for the Grove Street families, and as the game goes on, the gang starts to respect him more and more. The gang has a big problem, however, and that's that dope is flooding the streets, which only Grove Street is trying to do something about. Other than that, there's also the fact that there's internal struggles at the families. While Sweet tries to play the ambassador, he finds another problem, and that's Kendall's new boyfriend, who he doesn't trust, probably because racism, the fucking... and he sends CJ to Carmeet to get his sister. CJ and Caesar become allies when CJ realizes that he poses no threat for Kendall, and the various Los Estacas, whatever, Caesar unit, they become affiliated with Grove Street. Meanwhile, at Smoke's side, he finds himself having to do a lot of work for Crash, who keeps showing up at his place, but before that happens, Sweet, Smoke and Carl pick up their old friend, Jeffrey aka OG Loke. I'd say this is the first white-black man, but unfortunately Michael Jackson beat him to it. So with Sweet and Ryder doing stuff for the Grove, and with Smoke doing stuff for Crash, what do Loke's missions involve? Making him a rapper. Yes, apparently SoundCloud rappers were a thing before SoundCloud. How else can you explain? So CJ ends up sneaking inside the house of the popular rapper Mad Dog, stealing his rhyme book, and in a later mission he even kills his manager. With Loke, who worked at the burger joint after his parole officer forced him to, eventually quitting and throwing a party that the Ballas tried to crash. Later on, Crash calls Carl to tell him they have a job for him, which Carl does because he pretty much has to. During his first Crash mission, he sets a house on fire and rescues Denise, a woman who was in there. Denise and Carl become lovers, but this does nothing. Eventually, Sweet calls Carl and tell him to deal with a big drug dealer, which Carl does. After this, and shooting up at Balla's funeral, Sweet finally made the gang see eye to eye, and each set's rep meets up at a hotel, with the police crashing the party. Carl bursts in, saves Sweet, and a whole lot of officers get killed. With the Grove being reunited, Sweet calls for a gang battle under the Mulholland Bridge, but this was a setup. As it turns out, Smoke and Ryder were tagging along with some Ballas and Crash, crippling Grove from within. Now there's a lot of theories out there as to why Ryder was involved. Apparently Ryder wasn't supposed to be a traitor, but Rockstar was basically forced to do so when some stuff went down with Ryder's voice actor. This would explain why in Ryder's arc he becomes more respecting to CJ, while with Smoke there is plenty of foreshadowing. It also explains why in the only 2 future missions where he's featured, why in one of those he doesn't say anything and in the second one it's only repeated lines. But this is something that already has plenty of videos and I'm not planning to cover those. Having been dropped in Whetstone, Carl has to dispose of an informant, but when he's finished, he calls up Caesar, ordering him to take his sister out of town, since Los Santos is dangerous at that time. Caesar also calls up his cousin so CJ can make some money on the side. Those who play GTA 3 immediately recognize this woman as Catalina. I don't like her, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. CJ gets a call from a man introducing himself as The Truth, who is a contact of Tenpenny, and the two become well acquainted. While CJ and Catalina are robbing banks and shit, CJ gets invited to a street race, and before this race he meets Wu Zimu, a tribe member localized in Chinatown, San Fierro. When CJ wins a race, he and Woozy become acquainted, and Woozy mentions that he has some work with CJ should he ever make it to San Fierro. During the last mission, Catalina breaks up with Carl and she moves to Liberty City with Claude, of who CJ wins a rundown garage in San Fierro. When CJ gets enough money, he meets the Truth at a pot farm, who he has to burn when the police threatens to come in. Having burned the farm and loaded 3 tons of grass on board, the two head for San Fierro to the new garage. The garage ends up being a dump, but Kendall proposes to turn it into a business, and she starts working on making it one. CJ and Truth go ahead and get together some of Truth's old friends, and as the garage comes along, Caesar calls Carl after he saw signs of smoke pushers in the Angel Pine region. During this mission, CJ takes some pictures and shows them to Woozy, who identifies them as the local syndicate. CJ infiltrates them through Jizzy, the big club owner. He also meets Mike Torino, who is the brains behind everything. When CJ finds a crack factory, he goes ahead and kills Jizzy and heads for a meeting where the local syndicate and the Ballas are supposed to meet. At the very maturely named Pier 69, CJ, Caesar, and a bunch of Chinese crash the party, and CJ ends up killing Ryder, which he ends up feeling bad about. But he can't feel bad yet, because Woozy's people found Torino's chopper, which CJ blows up. After this, CJ goes to the crack factory, blowing it up, ending the San Fierro saga, assuming you don't do the optional Wang's car missions. After destroying the crack factory, a mysterious person calls Carl and mentions his brother. Carl makes his way to the desert, where the caller turns out to be Mike Torino, who survived the helicopter crash. Mike reveals to work for a government organization and makes CJ do some work for it. Eventually he requires CJ to buy an abandoned airstrip, where he and Truth steal a jetpack from the government, because why the hell not, and sneak into Area 69, because why the hell not, and later use a jetpack to steal some classified green goo, because why the hell not. After this, Woozy calls Carl, inviting him to his new business, which is the Four Drags Casino in Las Venturas. Not long after setting up, they've been dealing with rival casinos and mobs squeezing up the place. CJ proposes to do a big heist on rival casino Caligula's. While this is going down, Carl meets some of Truth's friends, Rosie, Paul and Macker, who happen to work for Caligula's and are looking to get out of the game. As the heist gets prepared, Carl finds a washed up Mad Dog threatening to jump since he fell from grace. Carl ends up saving Mad Dog and taking him to rehab, and once CJ ensures that rival mob boss believes that Rosie, Paul and Macker are dead, he proceeds with the heist, assuming you actually did the mission, because it's technically optional. Now for some reason Carl makes his way to Crash, because the only reason he knows is because there's a big marker on the map saying where the mission is, or whatever, and they ask CJ to take out an agent and steal some dossiers. When he's done, Tenpenny asks them to meet in a ghost town to do the exchange. At the exchange, Tenpenny shuffles Officer Hernandez, accusing him of leaking their corruption. Pulaski makes Carl dig a grave big enough for both Carl and Hernandez, but Hernandez wakes up and tries to attack Pulaski, getting shot in the progress. Pulaski tries to escape the scene with Carl giving chase. Eventually, Pulaski comes to a halt and dies by Carl's hands. When the heat has settled down, Carl, Kendall and Woozy are trying to scope talent for the casino, but fail to find anything. Maddock ends up bursting in and saying that he's clean and wants to come home, but that he can't because the mansion was seized by Big Papa, a big time dealer. CJ and some trides parachute onto the lot and clean out the place from gang members having taken over the mansion. Carl invites over Rosie, Paul and Macker and start recording for Maddock's new record. While recording, Torino crashed the party, asking CJ to do him one last favor. After CJ casually stole a jet and destroyed some agents, he goes back to the mansion, where Sweet calls him saying he's been released from prison. Carl picks him up and offers to drive them to their new home, which Sweet scoffs at, as his home is at the Grove. Having arrived back at the Grove Street where the situation is dire, and there are many crackheads roaming the street, and Sweet takes matters into his own hands again. He and Carl take out some dealers, gang territory gets taken back, and things are looking good again for the Grove. While all of this is going down, CJ also does some managing for Mad Dog, and by that I mean he tracks down OG Loke and takes back Mad Dog's rhyme book. On the spot, Mad Dog gets a record deal, and Mad Dog is back. As time went on, Tenpenny was put on trial for his corruption, but during the trial, evidence ends up missing, causing many people to cause mayhem based on the 1992 Los Angeles riots. During these riots, Carl and Caesar try to reform the various Los Aztecas, taking back Caesar's hood, and when this is done, CJ gets a phone call saying that Sweet almost knows Smoke's location, and after 35 gang territory is taken over, 35% I mean, Sweet finally knows where he hides. Carl fights through Smoke's crack fortress and later ends up killing him, after which Tenpenny shows up trying to escape from Los Santos and tying up loose ends. Noticing that Tenpenny is on edge, CJ takes advantage of the situation, causing him to flee the scene. CJ also escapes the scene and Tenpenny tries to escape using a fire truck that Sweets hangs onto. One chase mission later, the fire truck loses control and comes crashing on Grove Street with Tenpenny fatally wounded. He monologues for a bit before dying in a traffic accident. Knowing that it's all over, CJ and Sweet go inside and meet up with their friends. Later on, Mad Dog comes in proudly announcing their first gold record, and in the after party, CJ hits the block, never to be seen again. So overall the story is quite enjoyable and has many themes including loyalty, betrayal, family and corruption. My favorite character has got to be Tenpenny though. Not only does he really feel like a corrupt piece of shit officer, but the fact that he's voiced by Samuel L. Jackson makes it even better. And there's pretty much no moment where I feel like the voice acting is bad. If the game didn't look like a late PS2 title, I'd say you could take the cutscenes and compile some of them and make a pretty convincing movie out of it, as the cinematic quality are definitely there. But obviously it's not only about how the game looks, but also about how the game feels. So how does San Andreas feel? The answer? Fantastic. That's the best way I could say it. This might be a late PS2 title, but the controls, they just work. The driving works better than GTA 4, and the gunplay is amazing due to the new lock-on aiming system, a feature so great that a lot of later games, both inside and outside Grand Theft Auto, took note of. Though there is one thing I could criticize San Andreas over, it's that the game was obviously made for console first and PC second. It's obvious that they want you to use the controller. This is something I found out when I decided to play the game twice. One playthrough where I streamed the game using keyboard and mouse, and another one where I recorded it for the now dead Starlight Games. Rest in peace Starlight, you will be missed. But when I played it with a controller, I noticed that I was having a way easier time, especially in the combat sections. Normally when it comes to a game with shooting mechanics, I prefer to play on PC, since you can aim way better with a mouse, but in San Andreas, aiming pretty much isn't needed at all, once again, due to the amazing lock-on feature. But because you can aim at the push of a button, so can your enemies, and I swear it feels like the enemy AI has perfect aiming, which makes some missions like You've Had Your Chip a royal pain in the ass. Well, unless you decide to ultimately cheese that mission and take the rocket launcher. Yes, San Andreas is one of those games where it's pretty easy and fun to break it. Some missions, while they don't say it, allow you to take some shortcuts or even outright skip some sequences. Take the mission PS69 for example, where at the end of it you have to kill in a boat chase, but if you have a sniper rifle at your side, you never even have to touch the water. The mission Up Up and Away? Go to the airstrip, take the jetpack and skip half the mission. And there are so many more amazing ways to break the game, and there's probably plenty more that I, or anyone else for that matter, haven't found yet. For example, my friend Chester, who is a pretty big fan of Rockstar and loves San Andreas probably even more than I do, didn't know about the bug where if you are on the phone, you cannot die from falling damage. Though if there is one bug I cannot stand, it has to be the PC exclusive bugs, and with that I should probably clarify what I mean. The PC port then, released in 2005 for, you guessed it, the PC. I prefer all of my games on PC. You get the best graphics, the best frame rates, and the control options are there. But let's talk about frame rates. San Andreas runs on 20 frames per second on PC. There is an option to turn off the frame limiter, allowing your FPS to increase dramatically. Don't. This is from a day and age where 60 frames wasn't as common, especially in 3D games. PC gaming wasn't as popular as it is today, and because of that, the game was never built for high frame rates. If you turn off the frame limiter, you will find yourself wondering why the physics are ultimate ass, and that's because they're tied to the frame rate. Why is my swimming speed so slow? Frame rate. Why do I instantly brake when I let go of the accelerator? Frame rate. Why do I instantly fill the boat's cool without doing anything? Frame rate. This is one of the reasons I think the game shouldn't have given you the option to turn it off, since clearly the game wasn't made for 60 FPS. What's even worse is that some people didn't know about this and ended up dropping the game because of it. So, if you still haven't picked it up and you want to do so, then don't touch that frame limiter. But that's not all, because the game outright crashed on me when I streamed it. And it didn't just crash on me, but it crashed when a car blew up by my hand. A game about wreaking total havoc, and it crashes when I try to wreak havoc. How ironic. But I ended up having to download a silent patch, which, while it solved the issue, and if I wouldn't know any better, even improved the game's quality, still feels wrong because I don't want to review a game based on a mod. When I play a game, and especially when I stream a game, I want the experience to be what the developer intended. And what's even weirder is that this happened on my PC, which has a 2080 Ti, but not on my laptop, which has a 1650. Could it be a problem with RTX? I mean, it cannot be that the 2080 Ti is more powerful, because while it's true, both the 1650 and 2080 Ti are complete overkill for a game like this. So if you want to have a crash-free experience, and just like me have a policy against modding your games, don't pick up the PC version. But then what version should you pick up? Because there's only so many of them. The game came out on PS2, Xbox and PC, so naturally the PS2 port would be next. And since it's built for PS2 first, this is your best bet. Though I'd say the Xbox port isn't bad either, and while I've no experience with the Xbox port, I do know about a lot of differences the Xbox made to certain games. With the PS2 being the weakest console back then, I assume the Xbox will give you slightly better graphics and a more stable frame rate. Hell, my friend Apes told me in one of my streams that apparently on the Xbox you could import your own music in-game, which is something you could also do on the PC version. For that reason alone, I'm gonna give a solid recommendation to the Xbox version, because a feature like that should always be endorsed. And just to be clear, I don't want to shit on the PS2 version of the game, and it's probably the one that sold the most, so it will definitely be one that most people have experience with. And if you don't have access to retro hardware, don't stress, because December 5th, 2015, the game hit the PS4 store and it's just the PS2 version. Honestly, because of the popularity of the game, I'm surprised it took them that long to re-release it. I mean, not releasing a popular game is like getting upset about traces of a sex minigame that was scrapped from the game. Huh. Oh boy, we're getting there, huh? Alright, look, I know that hot coffee is a controversial subject depending on who you ask, so I'm just gonna be blunt and simple. Fuck off, soccer moms. Of all the things you could be upset about, you choose to be upset about the very natures of human reproduction? No, fuck off and go ride at a Walmart or something. Actually, don't do that. If you do, wear a mask. I understand it. Okay, I completely fucking understand it. The problem is, they don't understand me. It's like they only have eye for themselves. They only have ear for themselves. When are we going to matter? When are our opinions going to matter? Like, have you seen the way they move? The way they try and convince people? The way how our opinions don't exist? It's only theirs? Like, come on, man, I can have an opinion too. Like, who the fuck cares about all those Karen's opinions? fine. I've been put on trial by everybody who's named Karen. Well, I guess while I'm waiting for the judge to make its judgment, why don't we take a look at all the side activities of San Andreas? So welcome everyone to the 100% completionist bullshit tier list. Okay, so right now I have my trusty tier list maker. I've heard this was pretty popular, so yeah, I'm just gonna take a look at all the side activities you have in the game and rank them based on, well, how fun they are. So let's begin with the 8th track, because that's the first one I have here. Yeah, it's just basically a racetrack, and you know, because it is Grand Theft Auto implying that it's about racing, I'm gonna say this one, yeah, S tier. I mean, not really a lot I can say about it. Unlike the ambulance driving, because this one is a little bit different. You see, in ambulance driving you need to go to your you're basically a taxi driver for injured people, and because of that, unlike the normal taxi missions, if you accidentally run somebody over, the entire mission is over. And I know that a lot of you guys are going to say, well, gee, don't run them over. Easier said than done. I'm sorry, but this one is going to get a D. Okay, so I know I put them in there separately, but I'm going to rank the bike school, boat school, and racing school all together. Basically, they're quite harmless. You just need to do a few challenges. Don't make my mistake and go for gold, because it doesn't contribute at all in 100% completion. So yeah, if you just do them the normal way, I'm going to say they all get a B. Now next up we have wait. Oh yeah, this seems to be the Blood Ring Banger. Again, pretty good, but also quite frustrating, because sometimes you can you know, you can get shot and as a result you explode, so it's good, but not as good. Now the BMX challenges, they're quite... You just, you know, you find a BMX in the skate park, you do the challenge, and that's pretty much it. Pretty simple stuff, A tier. The Chiliad challenge, you're basically on a bike and you need to cycle on Mount Chiliad. It's basically a glorified race, but it can also be quite frustrating, especially with the third one. Courier, on the other hand, no, I'm sorry, but this is way too repetitive. Now the dirt track, once again, it's a race, and in a game about racing, that's all you need. Now the fire truck missions, these are a little bit different. Basically, you're in a fire truck and, well, get this, you need to solve the fires. I'm gonna give it a B. Like, it's quite dull, but if you realize that the reward you get for it is the ability to walk through fire without being harmed, that's perfect, and that's all I need. Which one is this again? I'll get to that one later. Beating up all the gym masters to learn new moves. Pretty simple, so yeah, there we go. Horseshoe collecting, on the other hand. Now, both Los Santos, San Fierro, Las Venturas, and the entire map have a special collectible dedicated to them. In the case of the horseshoe collecting, it's in Las Venturas and there are 50 of them. However, the game is built so at that point you do already have the jetpack, which makes it a little bit more easier. Now, easy or not, it is quite frustrating to go to 50 separate locations. My recommendation would definitely be to have a map, but this is obviously just 50 things they scattered over the map, and this is the only one that's gonna get a C tier. Because the oysters, which are 50 scattered across the entire map, fuck out of here. And the tags, same shit. The snapshots, I would put them on C, but you know, yeah, because unlike the oysters, you don't need to go across the entire map. So yeah, there we go. Now which one are we having here? Here we have the kickstart side activity, which is basically you doing stunts on the Sanchez motorbike. I'd say it's quite good, but at the same time it's also kind of out of place. Now the NRG challenge, which basically is the BMX challenge, so I'm gonna rate it the same as the BMX challenge. This one on the other hand, I look at this, I look at the import-export, where you need to go and get 30 different cars all the way across the entire map. When I streamed this, it took me 5 fucking hours. And I'm not even joking when I say that. 5 fucking hours, and it was even worse when I recorded the game, because I didn't even bother to just show me doing it. Instead, I did this. And again, this was for a channel which was supposed to do the game, but we ended up skipping on it because, you know, the ultimate death of the channel. But because of this, because of how much fucking time this takes, I'm gonna rate it a D. And I would rate it even lower if it was possible. Okay, what's next? Taxi driving. Yeah, I mean, this game ain't Crazy Taxi and you need to drive 50 people, and as a result you get nitro on all taxis. Pretty good, but not as good. The ammunition shooting range, well, it's a shooting range, so that's all I'm gonna say about it. Racing on the other hand, and yeah, basically all the racing tournaments, I'm gonna be looking at those, and again, because this is a game about racing, I just quite enjoyed, and the amount they give you, like, the driving is fun, so racing becomes fun. Okay, next up we have getting all the safe houses. Now there are, I believe, 29 of them. So yeah, over the entire map. I'm gonna give it a B. Trucking on the other hand, there's, I believe, 10 missions of them, but some of them are so bloody frustrating. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna give you a C. Valet parking. C. The quarry missions. Now these are quite original, so I'm gonna rank them B. The pimping. Basically, imagine driving a taxi, but you don't do it as much because there's only like 12 parts of the mission. I mean, yeah, you're a pimp, and if you do it good, or if you finish it, you get free sex from hookers. A solid B. Vigilante on the other hand. This is one where I'm kind of a little bit different about, because Vigilante, you need to be in a officer's vehicle. The problem is, if you step in a normal police car, you're probably gonna die, or your vehicle's probably going to explode, causing you to fail the mission. And because you can only shoot from either the left or the right, it's pretty difficult to defend yourself. However, if you do it in a tank, it becomes too easy. So you need to make the decision if you want the game to be difficult or easy. And because of that, I'm gonna say it's once again a B. Now which one is this again? The freight train. Basically you need to drive over the entire map, you need to do it twice, and mean, yeah, it's alright, but it could be better. Okay, so that's all of the optional stuff. Now keep in mind there's also some optional missions, but because they are clearly marked on your map and because they technically are considered part of the story, I will not be looking at them because I don't want to spoil the game any more than I have to. So yeah, this is my tier list, take it as you will. Oh my god, the sun is already coming up. Well, I suppose that means I've pretty much spent the entire night coming up with things to say about this game. Now, there is still plenty of more things I could say about it, like for example how, once again, the revolutionary gameplay inspired many other games. Maybe I can talk about how this was one of the last games where cheat codes were a thing, and my god, those are blast. Like, I unfortunately lost the cheat sheet my brother and I made, but yeah, we had the infamous cheat sheet, and a lot of people have that. Now, nowadays, I have the cheats memorized in my brain, and pretty much all of the cheats I want, well, I know most of them. I know that if you want flying cars, you type in RIPAZHA. I know that if you are in a pickle, you type HESOYAM, which, let's be real, always fails the first time, and then you try to type it the second time, but it's a little bit too late, so, you know, your plane explodes. There are so many things I can say about this game. So many ways the game is just amazing, and I fucking love it. Like, if I haven't convinced you yet, if you haven't checked it out yourself, the only thing I can say is to try it out. Like, my recommendation would be, however, to play it on PC first, if that works. If it doesn't work, either install a silent patch or move to the PS4 version, which is the PS2 version. I would recommend the most to play it on original hardware, but let's be real, we live in a day and age where we don't really have those connected anymore. And yeah, that's a damn shame. I would recommend it if you can go out of your way, if not for the nostalgia alone. Like, I kind of would hope that Rockstar would just, like, take the game and, you know, remake it. Like, can you imagine how dope it would be to have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on a modern platform with it actually taking advantage of modern technology? Huh?